I want to talk about these US-backed anti-government protests here in Thailand and a recent statement just made by the UN. It says, Thailand, we are deeply troubled by the charges filed against 35 activists under Article 112. Thailand must stop using such serious charges for the exercise of free speech and peaceful assembly. We urge the government to amend the lèse majesté law. And if we go to the full statement here, they talk about a 16-year-old being charged. So the Western media has been telling us these kids, we should just hand the whole country over to them and just listen to everything that they have to say. But now we're being told they shouldn't even be held accountable for their own actions. And of course, that just doesn't add up. But then again, this was never about kids rising up against the Thai government or against the Thai monarchy. It was always about the Thai opposition doing so while hiding behind these kids. And now the UN also says, we also remain concerned that other serious criminal charges are being filed against protesters engaged in peaceful protests in recent months, including charges of sedition and offenses under the Computer Crime Act. Again, such charges have been filed against the minor, among others. Except Article 112 entails criminal defamation, not free speech, and criminal defamation laws exist in nations all around the world, including all across the Western world. In places like Europe, you can go to jail for denying the Holocaust in certain European countries, and even for defamation in general, you can face prison in several European countries. And Thailand has criminal defamation laws that protect everyone in society, not just the head of state. So in this regard, the UN is making a statement condemning a nation for applying criminal defamation laws. Thailand's defamation law regarding the head of state certainly is strict when enforced. But the UN itself admits in recent years they haven't been enforcing it. So why is the government deciding to enforce it now? And this leads me to the second thing that I have a real problem with regarding this UN statement. They keep referring to these protests as peaceful. They are not peaceful. The protesters vandalize and destroy public and private property at nearly every rally. They've been illegally blocking roads around the city for months. They've targeted mass transit systems. They've assaulted the police. They've assaulted counter-protesters. They've harassed commuters. And more recently, they've begun introducing firearms to the protests. They are not peaceful, and they have repeatedly tried to storm sensitive locations, including the National Police Headquarters, a military base, and even the Crown Property Bureau. Even the opposition media has begun noting the violence and needless, senseless provocations used by the protesters. And it is for this reason that the Thai government has begun charging leaders to the fullest extent of the law to bring this all to an end. Because the next step after this is even worse violence. And if putting leaders committing crimes and encouraging others to commit crimes, if putting them in jail can prevent this crisis from reaching this next, more violent step, then it is the government's responsibility to do so. And one more thing. The UN has decided to make this statement in contradiction to both international norms and in violation of Thailand's sovereignty, yet the UN has said nothing about the open US government support for these protesters. Here is the US National Endowment for Democracy, a fund created by the US government, funded annually by US Congress, and overseen by both Congress and the US State Department. They are funding virtually every core organization involved in driving these anti-government protests in Thailand today. This is a blatant attack on Thailand's political independence, an attack prohibited under the UN Charter. So if the UN wants to speak up about anything, it should be speaking up about this, but it isn't. The UN has in the past and right now is demonstrating its inability to act objectively and how instead it is being used as a political tool of the US government, who just recently openly sided with the Thai anti-government protesters. It's just yet another blatant act of political interference. And we're watching step by step the US, hand in hand with the UN, creeping towards intervention in Southeast Asia just as they did in the Middle East. And if the violence the anti-government protesters in Thailand are carrying out now in the streets isn't reason enough to start fully enforcing the law against them, then perhaps the prospect of Thailand becoming the next Libya, Syria, Yemen, Ukraine, or even Hong Kong, perhaps that is reason enough to start doing so. Please like and share this video. Please get this information out to as many people as possible. Please also help support the alternative media around the world, and especially here in Thailand, so that we have a voice to speak up against statements like this from the UN, and also against the Western media, who is surely going to back up this UN statement. Please check my video description for references for this video, as well as for information on how you can help support my work. And for those who are already helping, thank you so much. And as always, thank you very much for watching.